family, welcome to a bonus The Batman video this week, and this video is certainly an interesting one. I know I claim that they're all interesting, but I said I'll be posting a breakdown of The Batman, the official script book, and what changes are present and what even deleted scenes aren't even included in the movie. And there's even subtle ways that they executed certain scenes in the movies which are different to what they actually had for the script for shooting in the movie. Now that's quite common, obviously. They, on the day, or Matt Reeves might have found a certain way of doing it better, but there is some small nuggets. I'm going to sift through some of those, and then there's some bigger nuggets, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of them more than others, just how I feel like it could have been cool if it was kept in, what certain things could mean, such as Jim referencing his daughter Barbara, and things like that. So I hope you guys go on to enjoy this video. I do recommend picking this up for yourself. I have gone through start to finish, and I don't think I've missed anything, or at least I've made a bullet point of everything that I feel is personally notable. So you might see me reading off my screen a little bit because there's a little bit to go through. Can't wait to start a conversation. Maybe you guys will feel a certain way about some of these scenes we're about to talk about. Maybe you'll feel like, nah, yeah, I feel like they did a better job taking that out. So let's get into this. But honestly, just thank you so much for clicking on this video. Thank you for liking. If you do go on to like it, it helps me out a bunch. And the first one is right at the beginning of the movie, which is, of course, Bruce's monologue.
Thursday, October 31st. The city streets are crowded for the holiday, even with the rain. Hidden in the chaos is the element, waiting to strike like snakes.
But when he says hidden in the chaos is the element waiting to strike like snakes, in the script it adds a little teeny tiny bit on top of that. So waiting to strike like snakes at the decent, the vulnerable. So just simply a couple more words there added onto it. They may have felt like it would have been a bit easier to chop that out. I do think, waiting to strike like snakes is just a bit more concise rather than saying waiting to strike like snakes at the decent, the vulnerable. I do think that would have been cool still, but you get what I mean. But also with the line of 2 years of nights have turned me into a nocturnal animal, he says, my senses are heightened now. I can almost smell them. Now that is an epic line, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe they thought that was perhaps a little bit too much for the movie, or just simply saying 2 years of going out on nightly patrols as the Drifter and then suiting up as the Batman, as he later on does with the train gang to bust their asses. Maybe they felt like saying 2 years of nights have turned me into a nocturnal animal kind of says it all, rather than adding my senses are heightened now. I can almost smell them, which I do still really appreciate, because the fact that Batman is saying like his senses for the criminal element is almost got to the point of smelling them, that's pretty epic, but just another little nugget there. And just an example of things that I might not point out that you guys might be like, wait, Boba, I read the script book and you didn't mention this. For example, they call the drophead who robs the store with his gun sad emoji, nervously pulls a gun on the cashier, but obviously the drophead has a happy smile. So, do you know what I mean? There's irrelevant information like that, just in case you're wondering why I might not be getting extremely in between the lines of in-depth, but there is still some really juicy stuff here. So the fight at the beginning also seems to be a bit subtly different between the train gang and Batman. So the leader of the train gang says, as he does in the movie, the hell are you supposed to be? Initially thinking it's just another person in a Halloween costume. But then Batman stands there for a long, scary beat, eyes veiled, saying, I'm vengeance. And it seems like he says that before any of the combat ensues. And we know this because in the script book it then carries on saying that then one of the gang members are like, holy shit, it's him. Which is only then when the leader kind of raises his hand ready to fight, but then proceeds to get his ass kicked by Batman. So in the actual movie, they saved Batman saying, I'm vengeance, until he completely, popped his shoulder, broke his arm, kept swinging in his face, which I ultimately do agree that the movie's way was a better way to execute it. Another reason why I just really enjoyed getting this script book and why I recommend that you do, and this isn't so much like a bonus information thing, but it's kind of littered with this kind of bonus context, the way obviously the script describes how Batman is feeling. So obviously when they're shooting it, Pattinson can portray what is said on the script. So for example, when he's looking at Don Mitchell's son, because the son survived, the wife survived, and Nirvana just starts to play, it describes Batman stares from somewhere under that mask, an unspoken connection to this newly fatherless boy. So, you know, even though I'm going through information in this video, there's lots and lots of stuff like that describing, you know, you do read that through the screen, but just seeing it written on paper is definitely an experience that I enjoyed, seeing the way Matt Reeves decided to articulate that. So the next bullet point I'm reading off is to do with, actually I've seen a few people debate this online, but at the end of the day, if it's in the Bible, man, it's in the Bible. So when Bruce arrives in the Batcave and takes his helmet off, it goes on to describe him as follows. And we finally see Bruce Wayne, handsome, 30, black camo still around the eyes. Now we know on the news report as well, it said the Waynes were murdered 20 years ago this month, which I guess would make Bruce 10 years old, because it literally states that Bruce Wayne is 30 years old in this movie. But I think what people were disputing, and I can't remember it honestly from the top of my head, is that people said, well, technically the Waynes were murdered in this year, so that wouldn't make Bruce technically 30 if the Waynes were murdered like 20 years ago. But either way, I don't know if you're familiar with that. As I said, to me, Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne and Batman in the Batman Chapter 1 is 30 years old. So the next notable thing I wanted to talk about is when Alfred informs Bruce about the partial key that he's found and how he's looking for any double symbols to start, and you know how Bruce is in the movie's like, interesting, when he's like eating a grape or a cherry with his sunglasses on. This is when Dory arrives and says that the gentlemen are here, and this is a deleted scene that is cut from the movie that they definitely shot, because we've got some, I don't know if I would say footage, but there is some stills of Bruce sat in the chair just completely zoned out of this meeting. So if you're curious as to how the script goes for that deleted scene, so moments after this scene in the actual movie, two young executives arrive, saying they're afraid that we're at a critical point, referring to the situation going on at Wayne Enterprises that Alfred was going on just in the scenes before this with Bruce in the Batcave when he arrived in there, saying if this continues, it won't be long until you've nothing left. But Bruce is just sat there in his sunglasses, stone-faced, his gaze shifts distractedly to Alfred's newspaper on the table. Then the executives go on to say, at the very least, we'll need your signature to cover these losses, and the executives are just kind of looking at each other, because again, it's kind of awkward. Bruce Wayne sat there is just paying literally no attention, even to what they just said. So as they're looking at each other thrown, Alfred smiles apologetically as Bruce has wheels turning in his head. They say, Mr. Wayne, getting his attention. Bruce is just like, what? I need your signature, sir. Bruce signs, then we cut to the next scene we actually get in the movie, which goes back to when they're figuring out the whole partial key, and it picks up with Bruce saying, what if it isn't a partial key? So there was that whole scene missing. Stuff like this being cut out, I think, is absolutely fine. Clearly, with this movie being 2 hours and 46-ish minutes without the credits, it's quite a long movie. I have no complaints about that, but I think Matt Reeves probably was looking for some things that could be trimmed out just to make it a little bit shorter, and stuff like this isn't absolutely necessary. They had already conveyed that there's shite going on at Wayne Enterprises. Bruce is completely neglecting it, so to get more in depth with these two executives and Bruce just being so into his work, granted that this shows even more that he's just so in deep into Batman. There's not really much Bruce Wayne. He's just 24/7 Batman, and that will change in the future as we know a little bit. But that's, you know, we get the point. Now, next up after this, when Bruce is suggesting only using the letters from He Lies Still in the Batcave, which leaves a single word, drive, we then actually cut to a scene in the GCPD during the daytime. The room bustles with police and FBI codebreakers all fixated on the cipher projected on a huge wall. Feds say the code could take weeks if they can crack it at all, and I guess this is just to further emphasize that how, the feds, might take weeks to crack this, but Bruce and Alfred did it in like a day or two. But in this conversation between this other detective and Gordon then gets a call from a no-caller ID, and Bruce asks if Mayor Mitchell that is, had a car, which will obviously ultimately lead to that garage scene where they find the thumb drive. But Gordon, obviously at this point, doesn't want to acknowledge that it's Batman on the phone, so he pretends it's someone else, and he says, I'm sorry, can you hold on, honey? And he tells the other detective, my daughter, Barbara. And so the detective nods as Gordon takes a few steps away. So the interesting thing about this is that it is 100% confirmed, even though it's technically not in the movie, so I do get the argument of how that is technically not canon unless it's in there. But I trust that Matt Reeves is and probably will expand, as I've said in my top 10 once for the Batman Chapter 2 video, on Jim Gordon. I understand his usage in the first movie. I loved the detective duo of Batman and Gordon, but I do expect some fleshing out. Like, does he have a wife? Did his wife pass away and he just has his daughter? So is he a single father just raising his daughter Barbara? Is she a teenager? Is she like in her late teens? Obviously we don't know, and I don't want to like ramble about this forever, but it's just really cool because it doesn't mean that she's 100% going to be Batgirl in this trilogy that Matt Reeves is making. And you know, we could get a Robin, or we might not get a Robin, or none of this will ever be answered. But it's still cool to know that in this universe, just like the reference of Bloodhaven at the end from Selina, like all of this still exists. So Barbara is there. And I'd like to think that maybe, you know, Jim, you know, goes home at night, maybe he's a single dad, and maybe she's in college or something like that. Of course, she could be a little bit younger, but either way, Barbara, you know, it's pretty cool how Jim, when Batman calls, is like, honey, my daughter Barbara. So we'd love to know your thoughts on that. It's just a little nice nod, a nice crumb, and also could be a little bit, I don't want to say foreshadowing, but a clue to us as to what could come next with Jim. Maybe the camera will take him home in the next movie in a scene, seeing him review some case files, and Barbara is in the apartment or wherever Jim lives. So the next bullet point of note to me is that they made the Penguin a lot more sleazier, I guess you could say. So after that scene, Batman goes to the Iceberg Lounge, and when Selina comes in, when Batman first sees her, she sets down that drink tray. As we know in the movie, they exchanged the drops. But in this moment, Penguin touches Selina's thigh, and she says, "Touch me again, Oz, and I'll break those stubby little fingers, okay?" And Oz is just like, "Oh, you know, it's the dress. I was just feeling the material, sorry." So again, more of a creepy Penguin there, blaming it on just the material of her dress, and he just wanted to feel that. I wonder why they cut that out, though. Maybe they felt like they portrayed him being a bit of a sleazeball and creepy without including that scene. There's even a joke after that to Batman where he's like, maybe you should ask the mayor's wife, and he's just like, what, too soon? And he does that really like grimacing smile. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that. The scene with Bruce watching outside Selina's apartment in drifter mode, in a similar way to the Joker later on in the script, when Bruce is in drifter mode gazing through his binoculars, it says, "The drifter gazes, struck by the sight of the woman as the Catwoman." Now, this is more likely just for script purposes because, you know, this is giving her the moniker that she actually technically doesn't have in universe. And, you know, even though the subtitles of the movie and in the script for Barry Keoghan's Joker label it as the Joker, I do just like, this is another reason maybe to read it yourself. You do get these cool descriptions in the script of like, oh, you know, it's the Catwoman, or it's just like it reveals to be the Joker. But again, just to remind everyone, they technically haven't even got those names yet. Like, you know, the press haven't called them that in a story where Selina almost got busted as, you know, this Catwoman. So again, I'm very intrigued in future installments how these characters might get their iconic monikers. Next up is somewhat of a placement that I'm sure all of you already know, and that's the unseen Arkham prisoner scene. So after Gordon and Batman go and view the body where Commissioner Pete Savage's face has been chewed off, and he finds the letter again addressed to the Batman, and at this point it unnerves him to such an extent where he's thinking, I need to go and get help profiling the Riddler, which is then when we get that deleted scene in where he goes to see the unseen Arkham prisoner, but also as described in the script, the Joker, about halfway through. So initially in the script, he is labeled unseen prisoner's voice. The dialogue is mostly the same, you know, a present, almost our anniversary, isn't it? Once again, Batman is 1 year, 6 months in. So that gives you a good timeline like what we've already been over before. If Barry Keoghan's unseen Arkham prisoner Joker is saying almost our anniversary, so you could probably surmise that he put him away into Arkham Asylum for the insane around 10 to 11 months before this, if it's nearly their anniversary. We get the whole "you two have so much in common," masked Avengers. But as I mentioned in a similar description to what happened with Catwoman in the script, it's really cool just reading it out loud. So with this moment, it says, as the camera stops super tight on the wired glass, the blurred prisoner finally lifts his head. As he presses his lips close to the window, they come into focus. His mouth is diseased, horribly distorted into a rictus grin. The prisoner is the Joker. But what's interesting about this scene in the script version is that I feel like the movie did it a lot better. But this, as I pointed out earlier, is most likely down to translating it from the script to actually shooting it and seeing what works, what could work better when you do multiple takes. That's what it's all about in filmmaking, obviously. So in the script, it talks about how the Joker continues, quiet and with a sadistic pleasure in his voice. And he says, I think you don't really care about his motives, whether he loves or hates you. I think somewhere deep down, you're just terrified because you're not sure he's wrong. You think they deserved it, don't you? And it ends there. Batman leaves after that. Whereas with Barry Keoghan's Joker, as we know, is like,
you're just terrified because you're not sure he's wrong, huh? You think they deserved it, huh? You think they deserved it.
And then he goes very maniacal, and it's all building up maniacally as he's taunting him. Whereas in the script version, it is just as simple and concise in a more chilling way, still taunting the Batman, but not building up to a maniacal laughter. He's just like, because you're not sure he's wrong, you think they deserved it, don't you? And again, that still gets his claws into Batman as the door rolls open, but no way is it nearly as good as what Barry Keoghan did in delivering that maniacal laughter, the repeating of, you think they deserved it, huh? And just spraying with laughter as he leaves. 10 times better. Now up next, I kind of want to take a pause for a moment and revisit something that I've spoken about before, which I know people are very divided on. And this isn't exactly extra information, but more of the description in the book that I admit, this is a very, 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 very far reach, and it's about that mysterious person in the cathedral scene who Bruce speaks to. And if you guys don't remember as much, the dialogue was, what's good a safety net that doesn't catch anybody? Didn't help my daughter when she needed it, I can tell you that. Guy was just another rich scumsucker. He got what he deserved. Yeah, I said it. And ever since then, I've always said since my review, since that person isn't definitively, so to speak, identified, and there's a lot of nuance into the scene as to why I think what I think is a possibility, in that it could be Joe Chill, because again, long story short, Alfred and Bruce both acknowledge that it could have been a random thug on the street who pulled the trigger too fast, and it could have been Falcone, or Falcone deliberately hiring someone. So arguably, Joe Chill could still be the murderer of the Waynes. And this scene was so interesting to me because when you hear that dialogue, he's kind of looking at the mayor's death, saying, what's good a safety net that doesn't catch anybody? Didn't help my daughter when she needed it. There's two ways of looking at this, because this guy, you could argue, views Mayor Mitchell at this funeral as a rich scumsucker who got what he deserved. So if his daughter potentially passed away because it never helped her, he could have been so frustrated at the Waynes that he went out and killed them years ago. But then on the defensive side, for how this isn't Joe Chill and could be like a follower of the Riddlers, obviously, is because, they all don't really like the Gotham Renewal Fund either. That's their whole shtick, right? Like, they think it's a bunch of BS, this whole renewal thing, and he's just bitching about it in that sense of speaking. But this is when the description goes on as follows. Finally, his eyes shift to Bruce, underlining a truly chilling look. Now, yes, I know, that doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day, I suppose you could say, but it is also interesting how certain words are highlighted and underlined and made bold in the text font, if you will. Looking at Bruce, because obviously in the scene this whole time, he's just talking, and then he's like, don't I know you, kind of thing, giving him a truly chill look, right? It goes on to say, Bruce studies his acne-scarred face, nodding, when the man's expression changes, trying to place Bruce. Hey, don't I know you? Bruce glances back at the man after Bella Real comes in, who now glowers. He sneaks a look at the bitter nobody who glares as they recede, then turns, disappearing in the crowd. You can get into a whole in-depth analysis about this, and I don't want to necessarily repeat it all again from previous videos, because there's two sides to this. You could look at it that, hey, don't I know you? He's trying to place the face of a kid that he hasn't seen in 20 years, since he was 10 years old. So there is a slight recognition there. And then when Bella Real comes in and says Bruce Wayne, it answers it for him, and then he just dissipates into the crowd with that, like, this glowering look. Would one of Riddler's followers do that? Yes, there is an argument for it, because they might know that Bruce Wayne is one of the next targets. Obviously, he's also bitching about one of the rich in this moment, and then lo and behold, he overhears that this guy is Bruce Wayne. But yeah, I've always just felt like this scene, even though he's labeled a bitter nobody, is maybe open to interpretation. And if I ever get to interview Matt Reeves for the second movie, I'm definitely going to ask if that was intentional. Like, could it be seen that way? Because I definitely think it can be. And no, by the way, before anyone comments it, he is not the Riddler goon at the end of whom Batman punches that face in right before Gordon makes him stop when he's protecting Selina. The actor in this scene in the cathedral responded to me on Twitter saying that is his only scene in the movie. And also just the emphasis on how Bruce keeps kind of wanting to look back and almost places it, but then just, you know, Bella Real, got to get my head screwed back on, she's talking to me, and we carry on walking. And then the guy just like dissipates back into the crowd. Up next is when we get a deleted scene that we kind of get sneak peeks of in all the behind the scenes footage of when Bruce leans in, reaching into the trunk of his car, seizing an expensive leather duffel. He slams his trunk, disappearing into the crowd. Scenes like this of him going outside the cathedral, getting, you know, the duffel bag of the bat suit in it, and then going back in to Gil Coulson. It's just, I guess, unnecessary and a perfect example of a scene that just doesn't really need to be there to trim down a little bit of time. So next up is the Batmobile chase, which actually the ending was a teeny tiny bit different. Again, perfect example of how things might change along the way, especially when putting it together and shooting it. So after Batman clears the destruction, he rams into the Penguin's Escalade, and the two vehicles lock together and start spinning. And then finally, both vehicles smashing straight into a line of yellow off-ramp crash barrels. But then, and only then, the Escalade starts to flip. So again, after he lands, after that firing roar, he doesn't just ram into the Penguin. In fact, they lock together and they start spinning, and then they crash into a bunch of barrels, and then the car flips. So next up is a scene that ever since I saw this in the previews, I've been just dying to see it, and I actually really do wish this one was kept in. So when spray painting the floor for the evidence, Bruce searches an enormous stack of files. You know, we kind of saw that in the movie. He closes one, fumbling for another, when a huge stack begins to topple. He lurches to save it, knocking over more, thousands of pages spilling. Bruce watches helpless as they scatter everywhere. He stands there, watching it all settle. Finally, he snaps. And this is the part in particular that I'm on about. Finally, he snaps, hurling over the other stacks, paper exploding everywhere. Bruce's pent-up fury unleashed, smashing up the room, destroying everything. Furniture, art, his rage is terrifying. Even as he begins to exhaust himself, running out of things to smash, but not sated, searching for more when he sees something. Alfred's monogrammed W cufflink. If Bruce would ever allow himself to cry, it would be now. He stares stone-faced at the link, eyes just beginning to well. And my God, I would have loved to have seen that. Like, we would have seen Robert Pattinson in that scene. And again, we see a little preview of that, him throwing down a cabinet. So this happened, they shot it. And he, you know, as per the description, Bruce's pent-up fury unleashed, smashing up the room, destroying everything, running out of things to destroy and trying to find more. And obviously this takes place in the movie when Alfred's in hospital and they hope that he stabilizes. But the description of after seeing all of that pure Batman rage in that moment of him destroying everything, when it says if Bruce would ever allow himself to cry, it would be now. And you see his eyes well up after seeing the cufflink. That, I get maybe why it was removed, because not only do they cut scenes for time, but also pacing. Maybe Reeves didn't feel like it kind of added this fluidity to the scene, connecting to the scene after that. Maybe it just dragged it on a little bit, but I feel like that was an important one to show. Again, would love to pick his brain about that, especially just seeing a bit more to this vulnerable emotional side to Bruce that is initially expressed in rage and fury, destroying stuff. We would have seen him literally physically express his emotions and then get caught off guard, and then seeing that vulnerability there, that care he realizes that he truly has for Alfred. to the point of where if he would ever allow himself to cry, it would be now. But instead, the scene cuts in the movie and we pick up to where Selina's trying to contact Bruce on the contact lenses, and we still see him in the Batcave. I think he was still shirtless, so it just shows you how it's basically missing that scene there. The next thing I want to talk about is the dialogue from Alfred in the hospital scene when he's talking about, obviously, Martha and Thomas and what happened there when Bruce comes in saying, oh, so my father got that man Edward Elliot, the reporter, killed. So when Alfred was saying how Thomas was protecting your mother, he didn't care about his image, the campaign, any of that. He cared about her and you. In between, right after that, is when we get this. These secrets about your mother's family, they haunted her. She battled with them every single day. We all have our scars, Bruce, and your father knew. If everything came out, it'd be too much for her. It would destroy her. He loved her so much. And then there's a little extra bit from Alfred which made me laugh. So when Bruce says, of losing someone I care about, Alfred responds, well, I'm afraid you won't be rid of me just yet. I almost forgot to mention that Bruce also says that I went into their room last night. It all seemed so much smaller. Now, when Falcone heads outside the Iceberg Lounge, the 44 below, and he gets hit by the Riddler, that was also quite a bit different to how it was done in the movie. So when Penguin whips out his Uzi and the cops freak, rushing him, when shots ring out, Falcone's hit. Penguin is like, I didn't shoot. Everyone scrambles for cover as Batman looks up to see a rifle sitting out on the 6th floor window across the street. He lunges for Falcone as the rifle fires again. Bullets explode into Falcone's chest. So in this, there's a bunch of fire, and people think that it's Penguin, but Falcone is hit in that moment, but then everyone's scrambling around, and then a bunch more bullets, so plural, hit Falcone in the chest. So in the movie, it was just kind of like a clean sniper shot, but it seems that in the script, Falcone actually got sprayed in the chest quite a bit, and then bleeds out. Now, I bullet pointed this because to this day, we still have people in the interrogation scene between the Riddler and Batman where he's like, Bruce Wayne, thinking that for the sake of the security recording that he says, oh, he's the only one we didn't get. He still knows Batman's identity, but is just keeping it between them, if you know what I mean. But again, that's not the case. Riddler doesn't know, and in this book, if it doesn't spell it out enough already before this, after Riddler says he's the only one we didn't get, it states Batman reels. Riddler doesn't know. So the last few now. So when Batman's fighting on the rafters and he creates that smoke screen distraction, this is actually done quite a bit differently in the book. So Batman stumbles, collapsing as the gunmen shoot. He sees fire extinguishers on the railing, rips a sticky charge from his belt, slaps it on one, rolls it at the shooter, does the same to another and another. When the charges all blow, huge clouds erupt into the air as Batman evaporates into their whiteness. So multiple fire extinguishers. So he basically was like, dink, and then rolled it out, and then another one, and then another one, and they all detonate at once. Whereas in the movie, to be fair, I do prefer it. It makes more sense. He just takes one out, and it disrupts his whole pipe that seems to be going around the railings. So let me know what you think of that. Batman taking fire extinguishers from the railings and rolling them out one at a time by the sounds of it, and then they all just simultaneously blow. Another cool detail is right before Batman grabs the Bitter Nobody's rifle and starts, swinging and clubbing them down, in the script here it states that he seizes the barrel and his finger taser that we saw right at the beginning with the train gang, his finger taser zaps the metal and the gunman collapses, whereas in the movie, he just bursts out and rugby tackles the Riddler goon out of the smoke and, picks up the gun immediately. But in the script, this would have actually been pretty cool. He would have just gone zzz, straight away and then picked it up and then continued swiping. But I think maybe they got rid of that because that might have required a close cut, and the way they did it in the movie allowed quite a fluidity of him just, tackling, coming out the smoke, and then bang, 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 taking out all the goons with their own gun. Also, at the same area of the movie, this one's pretty interesting. So when Selina is inspecting the shotgun damage to Bruce, in where he can barely lift himself up, he's in excruciating pain, we get a much more kind of graphic version of this scene. So she notices his chest. The blast has torn his armor. Buckshot lodged in exposed skin. A lot of blood. So here we have a lot more of an exposed suit. So when that shotgun or the spray of shotgun buckshots just land in his chest, there is a visible exposed skin there. You can see, I guess, the outer edges of the buckshot. His armor has prevented it enough to kind of just be lodged maybe in the surface of his skin. There's a lot of blood there, which is why he probably has broken ribs and all kinds of things going on there as to why he could barely lift himself up, why he needed to inject himself to actually save Selina. So let me know what you think, because in the movie we had like bullet holes in the suit, but here it explains buckshot lodged in exposed skin, a lot of blood, and it actually tore his armor, so a lot more of like a tear there with skin exposed. And another debunking thing here, even though I don't get why, like, people still deny that, even though people post pictures from the concept art book of the shot that he takes at the end. In the concept art book, yes, it's green. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. And before we got this confirmation, I was totally down the road of a prototype Venom mixed with adrenaline very early or whatever. But no, in the concept art book, it says it's adrenaline. And here in the script, it says he fumbles something from his belt, an auto-injector, adrenaline. He jams it into his neck. Adrenaline. Which is when also afterwards, the script notes that when he loses all control and goes into a frenzy, Gordon and the cops burst out a door to the catwalk. Gordon races to Batman, and it says in bold here, like, to stop him from killing. So I think maybe a lot of people maybe deduced that anyway, because he was in a frenzy, truly like roided up with adrenaline, and he kept punching and punching and punching. But it's just interesting to see on paper that maybe if that didn't happen, like Gordon rushing in to stop him from killing in caps and in bold in the script, Batman could have broken his rule there in Batman Year 2 and already killed that bit of nobody, Riddler goon, who then goes on to say, I'm vengeance. And then lastly, guys, when Penguin is in Falcone's office, this was done a little bit different alongside Bruce's monologue at the ending of the movie. So it says, fresh, wet footprints lead to a lone figure seated in Falcone's chair, Penguin. Penguin sips scotch from Falcone's crystal tumbler, staring out over the city, his mind turning darkly. Now in the actual movie, he's standing there just kind of like, I don't, maybe you could argue it is darkly, but he's kind of just looking at the state of the city, maybe preemptively thinking, my God, I've got a massive battle ahead of me because this is my opportunity. But I think he's, in that moment, Colin Farrell portrays a both daunted look on Penguin's face, but I do support the whole, stirring darkly, because he's probably thinking, I need to confront this now. This is my time, but it's not an easy task. But here, he's sat in Falcone's chair, sipping scotch and looking out at the sea. So I think that makes it seem like Penguin, in that version of the scene, if he sat down like this, looking at the city, his mind turning darkly, and he's, sipping out a cup like this of scotch, that seems a bit more confident in a way, and just like, yeah, I'm freaking ready for this. The city's mine. Whereas at the end, I think it did glimpse that a little bit, because alongside the monologue at this moment it says, and some will seize a chance to grab everything they can. I think Penguin is definitely ruminating about that, but it does show a bit more of like a shock and awe to his face, rather than just like, yeah, sipping scotch and getting ready for what's to come. So that is it, guys. That is basically every big thing that I felt was relevant to talk about. I would love to know your thoughts on some of the more minute details, how some scenes were tackled differently. Just looking forward to reading your thoughts. But I think that is just about everything. I'm going to leave the floor open to you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. I hope you did like, especially as I always say, if you got this far, definitely do it. Do consider subscribing for more Batman videos like this. Follow me on social media. I'm now on Mastodon and freaking Hive, as well as Twitter, of course, and Instagram and everywhere like that. So do check those links in the description down below. Hopefully I'll see and connect with you guys on those other platforms. And there will be more Batman videos to come. So again, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.